What happens when you finally become brave enough to do the thing? You record the video, you launch the website, you publish the book, you start the business, you make the call. You finally step into the version of yourself you've been trying to become. And then nothing. The audience doesn't clap. That's exactly where most people unknowingly abandon their true identity and return to the old one, the matrix identity. I'm Diane Armitage, and welcome back to the Catalyst Code, where we crack the internal code that creates your external results. This isn't just about awareness. Most people stop there and then wonder why their results are so slow to change. This is about your embodiment, learning to operate from your true identity, the one that's been there all along, and maintaining the frequency that actually produces the life and the results you want. Once embodiment shifts, everything changes. You are the catalyst. This is the code. So let's go. In my Catalyst Code podcast episode last Friday, I introduced what I called the permission problem, or as I titled the episode, Honey, I Shrunk Myself Again. The permission problem is that hidden identity pattern that causes people to unconsciously return to smaller versions of themselves. It's the old fallback identity, what I call the matrix identity. It's the backup plan, the alternative option, the strategy I'm reserving just in case status. So today I want to talk about what happens after you step away from the matrix identity and back into your true identity. True identity, that limitless being that's been with you since you landed on this planet and happily thinks and operates from an entirely different plane of consciousness and confidence. Because, truth be told, the fallback identity doesn't only become obvious to you before you pack you up and take that step back to the true you, it often reappears after that courageous action. This is what the Matrix identity is all about. Notice in the Matrix movie, the Thomas Anderson played by Keanu Reeves, he was on the alert list for the machines in charge. The agents were the machines. They had created the Matrix world. They had him in their sights in a file somewhere, but he suddenly became the poster child on the FBI's most wanted list after he had stepped back into who he truly was, Neo, the guy predicted to free humanity from machine enslavement. It was after Neo made that first move that then the agents, or the machines, their entire focus shifted to finding the number one most wanted to take him out. Because the matrix identity is only about self-preservation at all costs. I've been working with a client for several months, years actually, but just in the last few months, we've been working on a really intensive one-on-one schedule, and I love it. She's making progress, but it was like one step forward and two steps back. So she then agreed to do an embodiment session with me because she was done playing games with her matrix identity. And just for the record, the embodiment session I do with clients is not some painful process like in the Matrix movie where they had to locate the Neo in a vast tower of humans hooked up to energetically feed the machines. None of that. No giant water slide escape chute. No hooking you up to electrodes or suggesting you walk across hot coals. I'm not even going to make you decide on which pill to take. It's just a series of questions that I devise specifically for each individual to help you find your way back to that shining beacon of you. Now, I'm simplifying the session tremendously here, but after our 3 hours together, she had identified her true identity. We even discovered the name for it. We had clarified who she really was and what she was really here to do. And we worked through a series of steps to reorient her to working from that place, from that identity, rather than continually reacting from the old one. And we also put a series of stepping stones together to help her immediately begin the journey from this identity. And for 4 days, she did exactly that. She was amazing. She created, she recorded, she published, she solved problems, she moved forward. And then I got the email. And the subject line might as well have been, the audience still isn't clapping. Her brand new YouTube channel views were low, as is always the case in the beginning. and the stats weren't where she wanted them to be, as is always the case in the beginning. And although she was sticking to her number one scheduled priority every morning, technology was acting up, her trailer had disappeared, her upload failed, her thumbnail wasn't cooperating, she had a migraine, her hair wasn't behaving. And suddenly, this woman who had spent days acting without fail from her true identity was convinced that she was a pathetic failure. In fact, she actually wrote, "The stats are horrible and I feel like a failure, like this will never fly." 4 days earlier, this same woman had identified and stepped into her true identity. 4 days earlier. Now, here's the fascinating part. When I read her email, I didn't see failure anywhere. I saw a woman who got out of bed with a migraine to complete her number one priority because it not only was her biggest commitment to herself, it was her joy. I saw a woman who created content when she didn't feel like creating content. I saw a woman who solved problem after problem after problem. I saw a woman who persisted in an entirely different framework than grit my teeth and force my way through it. That was the kind of persistence that I had witnessed before. In other words, I saw embodiment, really beautiful embodiment, but she couldn't see it. She was measuring views. I was measuring embodiment. She was measuring applause. I was measuring alignment. She was measuring immediate results, apparently deemed worthy by an outside world. It's an old matrix trick to pull on you when it's desperate. I, meanwhile, was measuring whether she had finally become the woman capable of producing them. But she couldn't see it because the audience hadn't clapped yet. The matrix identity that had had her in its clutches all those years was already reminding her that the external world mattered more. See, most people think courage is the hard part. It isn't. Most people think taking action is the hard part. It is not. The hardest part is remaining loyal to the true identity when your external world fails to confirm you. Remember, your matrix identity is now working like a ninja in the background to dismantle the very thing that has you on purpose. This is why I teach my clients endlessly about the imperative importance of the use of your will, not as a gritting teeth, power my way through will, but as the stabilizer of the newly rediscovered energy of you. Interacting with the energy out there as the catalyst of your life and the game changer in the world. When you are in that space, you might as well expect that the matrix identity will come rushing back into the room with your face at the top of its most wanted poster. Why? Because it knows it can permanently dismantle your world. And you know what else? It knows that you can permanently dismantle its world. The old identity starts whispering, maybe nobody cares. Maybe this isn't working. You're probably not good enough. It's probably wisest that you stop. And in that moment, when the external world fails to immediately confirm your true identity, your fallback identity is already celebrating in the wings. It thinks it's won. And this is why so many people never stabilize true change. Not because they didn't act, not because they didn't try, not because they weren't brave, but because they allowed the scoreboard out there to become more believable than the evidence in here. Remember that famous line from Price Pritchett? The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. The audience may not be clapping yet, but when you stand in the belief and the knowing of who you really are, the true identity is not conquerable. It is already winning. Most people think the audience is grading their performance, but the audience isn't grading your performance. The audience is simply arriving on its own timeline. And so the real question is not, why isn't the audience clapping? The real question is, are you abandoning the true identity before the world has had time to catch up to it?